I've always been impressed how Scott can keep calm under stressful, unexpected situations. I remember one time I was riding motorcycles with Scott and another man at San Rafael Swell in southern Utah. After a whole day of riding, we were all tired and were heading back to the van when Scott hit a bump and crashed his bike. The motorcycle landed on top of him and broke his femur. When I got to Scott, he casually stated, "I broke my leg." Both me and our friend were very concerned because we had at least 2 miles of rough terrain to ride back to the van. It was getting dark and cold, and there was no cell phone reception in the area. After getting Scott in a comfortable position on the ground, we started brainstorming ideas of what we could do. Things like, let's have one person stay with Scott and maybe make a fire, and while the other gets help. Except Scott was the only one who knew the area and how to get back to the van. And chances are no one would have come to the rescue until the morning. So it was a pretty sketchy situation. It was Scott that suggested we lift him onto his motorcycle so he can ride back to the van. We were riding trial bikes that are very small and don't have a seat like traditional motorcycles, so we couldn't double up on one bike and carry him out. So I looked around until I found a solid piece of wood that was about the right size. We made a splint for Scott and helped him back on his motorcycle. We rode on either side of Scott, both me and the friend, making sure he didn't fall over. And we rode like that for about 30 minutes before we got back to the van. On our drive back, we tried taking Scott to the closest hospital, which was in Green River, but he insisted on continuing to drive back to our home hospital, which was about 3 hours away, even with the broken leg. A different time I noticed Scott's ability to stay calm was on our whitewater kayaking trip. It was on the Hood River in Oregon. And I remember the guides had everyone in the group practice this rescue technique where if you flipped over in the kayak, you were supposed to stay upside down underwater, tuck your head in close to the front of the boat, and wait for someone to come and bump into your kayak, at which point you would reach over, grab onto the front of their kayak, and pull yourself up. This was really hard to do in the swimming pool and virtually impossible to do out on the river. I think everyone in the group flip over and bail out of their kayaks as soon as they flipped over, or some of us could do the barrel roll, which is a different technique. But I think only Kendall and maybe David could do that, or William. I think actually only Scott was the only one that when he flipped over, he actually waited there, tucked in, and waited for the guide to come in, bump into his kayak, and he held his breath and just sat there calmly underwater while he was flowing down the river. And he did that, and by doing so, he didn't have to, swim for his paddle, try to find a calm spot in the river, and pull his boat out of the water, dump the water out, and all of that. Avoided all of that effort just by staying calm and keeping and doing just trusting that people would come and rescue him. I think the ability to stay calm under stressful situations is one of the qualities that makes Scott so successful in life. Being able to ride a motorcycle through rough terrain with the pain and discomfort of a broken leg, or that probably or undoubtedly saved his life that day. Sitting upside down underwater in a capsized kayak and waiting patiently for someone to notice and come get you saved a tremendous amount of energy that otherwise he would have had to use. And I wouldn't be surprised if being calm has helped Scott in critical business decisions, while maybe others would have panicked and bailed.